Brad Stevens' moment to prove his worth? The NBA season is heating up, but for a brief moment, the spotlight shifts to college basketball. March Madness begins, bringing with it the opportunity for young talents to shine and catch the attention of the Boston Celtics. But the real question is, will Brad Stevens finally get it right in the draft? The Celtics are in full title defense mode with a well-established roster, but the reality is inescapable. Eventually, a rebuild will be necessary. And if there's one area where Stevens still needs to prove his genius, it's in drafting young talent. Since taking over as president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens has been nearly flawless in building the roster. But when it comes to the draft, the verdict is still out. If we're brutally honest, the truth is that the Celtics have yet to find a true steal under Stevens' draft leadership. Sure, he has been working with late-round picks, but that doesn't excuse everything. After all, how many impact players have emerged from those spots? Boston's biggest problem is that a championship window doesn't last forever. The current core, Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, Holiday, is at its peak, but the bench needs constant reinforcements. Long-term success depends on finding young, low-cost talent that can contribute immediately. If the Celtics want to remain competitive in the coming years, this draft becomes crucial. Can Stevens finally break the streak of underwhelming picks? Will he find a piece that, in 2 or 3 years, can be more than just a deep rotation player? With the madness of March Madness about to begin, some players will have the chance to prove they deserve to wear the green and white. The Celtics need versatility, defense, and above all, immediate impact. Here are 5 names who could land on Boston's radar and maybe, just maybe, help Stevens change his draft reputation. If there's one thing that always stands out in the NBA draft, it's players with rare skill sets. Danny Wolf, a power forward from Michigan, fits that category perfectly. Standing at 7 feet, 2.13 meters, he's not just a typical big man who protects the rim and grabs rebounds. Far from it. He can handle the ball in pick and rolls, make cross-court passes with surgical precision, and even stretch the floor with off-the-dribble shooting. But here's the big question. Will this unique skill set translate to the NBA? And more importantly, does it make sense for the Boston Celtics to invest in him? Joe Mazzulla has made it clear that he prefers bigs who can pass and make quick decisions. Just look at how the Celtics use Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, and even Luke Cornett. All of them do more than just finish around the rim. They need to read the game, make the right passes, and position themselves effectively to space the floor. Wolf fits this mold. He could be used in dribble handoffs, where he'd have the option to keep possession or roll to the basket. A perfect way to punish defenses doubling Jason Tatum. Additionally, his ability to operate as a secondary playmaker in short rolls, where a big receives the ball at the top of the key and decides whether to finish, pass, or shoot, would be valuable in countering defensive traps on the team's stars. Another intriguing factor, he already spent a season playing alongside Vladislav Golden, a 7'1", 2.16 makes center. That means he wouldn't struggle to play in double big lineups, something Mazzulla likes to experiment with depending on the game situation. Wolf's experience next to a traditional rim protector could ease his transition into formations featuring Porzingis, or even a future replacement for Horford. If Wolf were a solid defender, he'd likely be a guaranteed first-round pick. But he isn't, and this is where the concerns arise. He lacks the lateral quickness to guard faster wings, and his defensive presence in the paint is far from intimidating. The Celtics, a team that has leaned heavily on switchable defenses, may not want a player who requires specific tactical coverages just to survive in the NBA. Boston has to decide whether Wolf's offensive potential outweighs his defensive shortcomings. He could be an intriguing creator for his position, but if he can't hold his own on the other end, is he really worth the investment? If the Celtics take a chance on Wolf, it would be a bold move. He has a high offensive ceiling, but his defensive flaws could limit his impact in the rotation of a title-contending team. The NBA has seen plenty of skilled big men who never translated to the professional level simply because they couldn't stay on the court defensively. If there's one thing that always has value in the modern NBA, it's an elite perimeter shooter. And Isaiah Evans, a wing from Duke, is exactly that. A true flamethrower, capable of punishing defenses that give him even a sliver of space. As a freshman, he's currently shooting 44% from three, a staggering number for a player his age. But the real question isn't whether he can shoot. That's already clear. The question is whether he can be more than just that. The Boston Celtics are already one of the deadliest three-point shooting teams in the NBA. Under Joe Mazzulla, they've built an offensive system centered around maximum spacing and an absurd volume of perimeter attempts. So, in theory, adding Evans makes perfect sense. He's already comfortable playing off the ball, filling exactly the role Boston would need from him, a specialist wing, ready to capitalize on the opportunities created by Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Jrue Holiday. If he's truly consistent and lethal in catch-and-shoot situations, his adaptation to the Celtics system would be almost seamless. However, it's important to look beyond the shooting hype. The NBA is full of specialists who never carve out a real role in a rotation because they simply don't do anything else besides hitting threes. And that's where the concerns start to emerge. The biggest red flag is that Evans has very little experience as an on-ball creator. At Duke, he was used as a complementary piece, almost always relying on others to create for him. That's a major concern for teams looking for versatile wings rather than just a spot-up shooter. Beyond that, his defense remains a question mark. He has the physical tools to be a good defender. He's long and agile, but he was rarely tested as a primary defender against elite opponents. And let's be honest, in today's Celtics system, where defense is a pillar of success, a player who doesn't defend could struggle to find meaningful minutes. If Boston is simply looking for another shooter to space the floor and open driving lanes for its stars, then Evans could be a viable choice. But does Boston really need that? With Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, Horford, and even Derek White and Peyton Pritchard all being perimeter threats, is there truly room for a player who offers little beyond that one skill set? Perhaps a wing with more defensive versatility, or someone with potential as a secondary creator would hold more value for the team. Unless Evans develops other aspects of his game, he risks becoming just another three-point specialist without a guaranteed role in the rotation. As the Boston Celtics evaluate potential draft reinforcements, one name that could spark heated debates is Nick Clifford, a forward from Colorado State, an experienced player with a versatile skill set, but one who faces the classic question surrounding older prospects. Has he already hit his ceiling, or can he still develop? At 23 years old on draft day, Clifford fits the super senior profile, meaning he has spent more time in college basketball and theoretically has less room for growth. However, this doesn't mean he can't be a valuable piece for a team like the Celtics. But the central question here is it better to bet on a player ready to contribute immediately, or someone with greater potential for development? Looking only at on-court abilities, Clifford has a lot to offer. He is an explosive athlete, knows how to move without the ball, and has the ideal size and wingspan to play at the forward position, traits always valued in Joe Mazzulla's defensive system. His defensive versatility is one of the standout aspects. The Celtics have built their identity in recent years with defensive switches and flexibility, and Clifford fits this model perfectly. He has the mobility to guard point guards and the physical strength to handle wings and even some big men, making him a natural fit within the team's philosophy. Additionally, his offensive performance is solid and efficient. Averaging 19 points per game with a 40% shooting clip from three, he proves he can be a reliable finisher, especially on a team like the Celtics that prioritizes shooters who can play off the ball. If we compare, Clifford already appears to be more complete than Jordan Walsh and Baylor Shireman, who are still developmental projects. While Walsh is a promising defender but lacks a reliable shot, and Shireman still needs to prove his consistency in the NBA, Clifford arrives as a more ready package, with few holes in his game. Despite his strengths, there's a clear barrier. For Clifford in Boston, where would he find space in the rotation? The Celtics have one of the deepest rosters in the NBA, and the forward position is especially crowded, with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Jrue Holiday, and even Sam Hauser, The team already has multiple options at forward. Would Clifford get enough minutes to justify his selection in the draft? The answer may lie in the future of the roster. With Al Horford aging and Drew Holiday over 34, it might be smart for the Celtics to secure players who can absorb some of those minutes and keep the team competitive without spending too much in the free agent market. Moreover, it's always valuable to have versatile, athletic forwards on the roster. Boston has already felt the importance of such players in the conference and NBA Finals. If Clifford can be a reliable defender and a consistent shooter, he could become an essential piece in the rotation, even if his initial role is limited. The search for a solid and reliable center never ends in the NBA, and for a team like the Boston Celtics, one that needs to balance experience with youth, the choice of the next backup big man could be crucial. With Luke Kornet's free agency approaching, the Celtics may need an immediate replacement. This is where Crichton's Ryan Kalkbrenner enters the conversation. But is he just another traditional center, or could he become an essential piece of the roster? One of the main concerns surrounding Kalkbrenner in the draft is his age. By draft night, he'll be 23.5 years old, a veteran by college basketball standards, playing his 5th season at Creighton. For rebuilding teams, that's often a downside since older prospects tend to have a lower developmental ceiling. But here's the thing, the Boston Celtics aren't a rebuilding team, they're a contender. If this were a long-term project, it would make sense to draft a young center with untapped potential. But for the Celtics, selecting a player who can contribute immediately makes much more sense. In that regard, Kalkbrenner fits the mold perfectly. He already has experience in high-level competition and possesses the fundamental skills needed for a backup center. So the real question is, does Boston want a center ready to contribute now, or one to develop over time? Kalkbrenner excels in key areas that make for an effective backup center. He's an elite rim protector, positions himself well to contest shots, and has excellent shot-blocking timing. Defensively, he's already shown that he won't be a liability and could be a pillar for the second unit. Offensively, he does the basics well. He sets solid screens, moves well in the pick and roll, finishes efficiently around the rim, and even takes the occasional three-pointer. But here's the critical question. Does Boston really need a center with limited offensive versatility? Joe Mazzulla's system values bigs who can pass, make quick decisions, and space the floor. The Celtics already have Kristaps Porzingis as the perfect prototype of this style, and even Al Horford fulfills that role exceptionally well. Does Kalkbrenner have that level of versatility? The reality is that his offensive game is still quite raw. He might hit the occasional three, but he's never been a reliable shooter. If drafted, Boston would likely use him for the dirty work: rim, protection, rebounding, and setting screens, without expecting much more. Is that enough to justify a draft pick? Looking at Boston's current roster, it's fair to ask, does it make sense to use a draft pick on a center who might just be another rotational piece? Luke Kornet has improved significantly over the years, becoming a reliable role player who knows the system and contributes without needing plays drawn up for him. Neemias Queta, on the other hand, is still a developmental project, but has shown flashes of potential with his imposing physicality and defensive instincts. If Boston believes that Kornet or Queta can fill the backup center role, then spending a draft pick on Kalkbrenner might be unnecessary. But if Brad Stevens sees him as a natural replacement, capable of doing what Kornet does and maybe even better, then he could be a valuable addition. If there's one pick that could divide opinions among Boston Celtics fans and management, it's Will Riley. At 19 years old, he's the youngest prospect on this list, and that alone raises a significant question. Should the Celtics pass on a ready player to bet on the future? On the surface, Riley perfectly fits what the modern NBA values: a 6'8" forward with the ability to dribble, pass, and shoot. Players with this profile are highly coveted because they can become versatile, unpredictable, stars on offense. But there's an important detail. He's still far from being a reliable piece for a team that wants to contend for championships now. Riley is not just a tall forward. He has flashes of playmaking, something rare for someone his size. This means that, with patience and development, he could become a secondary creator, alleviating some of the pressure on Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The problem: does the Celtics need help now, or can they afford to wait? Riley's shooting is still inconsistent, which could be a problem for a team that depends heavily on three-point shooting. If he can't develop his mechanics to become reliable from the perimeter, he risks falling into the same limbo as many promising forwards who never found a spot in the NBA. Another critical point: his physical frame. Despite having great size for a forward, he still needs to gain strength to compete at the highest level. For a team like the Celtics, which prioritizes defense and physicality, this could be a deciding factor in keeping him on the bench or in the G League for a while. The Celtics are at a different stage than many other teams selecting at the end of the first round. While rebuilding franchises might wait years for a prospect to develop, Boston is in its title window now. What does this mean? Riley is unlikely to impact the Celtics in the short term, which could be a problem considering the rotation is already crowded and minutes for development will be rare. But what if the Celtics want to think long-term? If Riley can develop, he could be an extremely valuable addition to the team in the coming years. Having a 6'8" forward who can create his own shot, defend multiple positions, and complement Tatum and Brown is a luxury that few teams have. If the Celtics want an immediate rotation piece, Riley isn't the right choice. But if Brad Stevens and his development staff believe they can mold him into a future starter or even a secondary star, this investment could be worthwhile.